Hi YouTube, a couple of our friends have got a bit of land on the Basingstoke Canal. So you can see this is the walkway across the other side where the public walk backwards and forwards. But their bit of land is across the water, and so it feels a bit like a little island. It's really cool. When the water's up quite high, they've got a little boat as well, so we can go up and down on the water, which is great. At the moment the water's really quite low. You can see here, this is where they have been camping. They've got these really cool tents where they just are tied on trees and lifted off the ground. You have to get into them via a little ladder, but they're really cool. I don't know how comfy they would be over a longer period, but we're only camping for a couple of days. Our tent is further back. But what I'm going to do is do some pond dipping because I've brought my net with me, and here it is, and it's just perfect here to have a good old pond dip, see what we can find. So mainly I've been dipping the net underneath all this weed that you can see here, and then lifting it up and pulling the weed in. I've been doing a little bit of pond dipping on the mud at the bottom as well, but mainly I'm hoiking out this weed to see what's in it. Right, this is what I ended up with, so let's have a look through this tub and I'll show you what I managed to get. So first thing are these freshwater mussels. There are lots of these are everywhere and they vary in size. I think they can get much bigger than this, but this is a fairly small one. And what I've noticed is you can see their little foot comes out when they're in the tub. This is a little dragonfly nymph. This is quite a small one. They get quite a bit bigger than this, and these, when they're this kind of shape, they're mainly from the larger dragonflies, a bit like the emperor dragonfly. So the most significant animal I've been catching in the net is called the Signal Crayfish. If you have a look at this one, it's got real obvious white blotches on the top of its claws. Unfortunately, these are not our native crayfish. These were actually from America originally. They were grown in fisheries, but they managed to escape out into our waterways and are now a serious problem. If you have a look at the underside of the claws, they're bright red underneath, which is why they're called signal crayfish. Unfortunately though, you can't always turn them upside down to check on that if you're just viewing them from above. Our native crayfish has got white claws underneath. You can see there it was doing a powerful tail flick and it's got water all over the camera lens. But yeah, that is a defense mechanism. If you're trying to catch them in the wild, they do the tail flick and obviously that shoots them backwards so they can escape from any predators. Right, another thing I was going to say is when you go to pick these guys up, to start with it's fine. You can pick them up and they don't seem to notice, but after a while they catch on to the fact that you're grabbing them from above, and they do what this little one is doing here, which is they can see you and they start putting their pincers up before you can even grab them. So you've got to be a bit careful because they can give you a nasty nip. Another feature with these guys is that they have a slight bluish or turquoise kind of tint to them. You can see it more clearly on the underside than you can from above. There are several reasons why these are bad. The first is that they get a lot bigger than our native crayfish. These get to about 18 centimetres, whereas our native crayfish only get to about 12 centimetres. This means that these obviously end up replacing our native ones. If you have a look here, this is a claw that I found separately on the bank, and you can see the size of it compared to my finger here. They do get really quite big. The ones that I'm showing you here are nowhere near fully grown. They can also carry something called crayfish plague, which they can pass on to our native crayfish, and that can kill ours. You can very clearly see this obvious white blotch on this claw that I was telling you about before. Here you can see that claw that I've just shown you next to the largest crayfish that I caught on this occasion. You can see it's far, far larger than the claws that this one's got. These signal crayfish also dig really long burrows up to 2 meters long in the sides of riverbanks. In large enough numbers, this can actually cause erosion. You can see this small specimen has lost a claw at some point and is gradually regrowing a new one. So he's got one normal sized claw, one small one. Every time he molts his skin, the claw will get a little bit bigger each time. This particular crayfish I'd picked up quite a few times at this point, and I think he was starting to get a bit fed up with me. You can see he's really trying to reach back with his claws, really trying to give me a good pinch. Luckily I managed to get away without getting pinched, but this one was definitely trying harder than before. It was at this point that I wondered if they would actually pinch some sticks, if I put some sticks in between their claws. This one had its claws raised in a sort of threat position, so I decided it was the perfect time to give it a try. And you can see the answer is yes, they do pinch onto a stick and are quite willing to cling on for quite some time. Here's another example of that. Here's another example of how they flick their tails when you lift them up and turn them upside down. Remember, this is a defense mechanism to try and allow them to escape. So if you look here, it'll do a couple of tail flicks. The first one won't get the camera lens wet, but it's so sudden. That was the first one, and this second one that it does, there you go, it splashes the camera lens. I caught a lot of these little diving beetles in the net as well. You've got to be careful when you pick these up because they can pierce you with their biting mouth parts. This is how they rest on the top surface of the water, breathing through their abdomens. Another cool thing that I caught is called a water stick insect. This is not to be confused with a water measurer, which is also long and thin, but it floats on the top surface of the water, is quite a bit smaller. If you have a look at this, it's got a long pointy bit on its abdomen, which looks a bit like a sting, and a lot of people get scared by that, but it's not. It's actually just a breathing tube, a bit like a straw or a snorkel. So it actually rests in the water with that long bit actually touching the top surface of the water so it can breathe through it. Again, it's breathing through its abdomen, much like the water beetle that I showed you before. Our friends also keep lots of chickens for their eggs, and they walk around in these little family groups, and when you're camping on the piece of land, it's really cool because you wake up in the morning, you come out of your tent and all the little chicks are there trying to get food from you. When you walk around, they follow you everywhere. It's great because during the day they can just roam about freely over a wide area, and then at night time they all just go back in their enclosure to protect them from foxes. If you've watched this channel before, you'll know that I like to look for things wherever I go. So on our friend's piece of land, I also managed to find this glass bottle, which is a really cool old one, and it's got the marble still in it. So if you haven't seen this type of bottle before, it's really cool. You'll see it's got these little dents in the edges of the bottle here, and what that does is the marble is trapped inside by these two main dents on the side here of the bottle. So the marble can't fall down any further than that. There's two smaller dents at the top prevent the marble from tipping forward if it's like this. So you can pour your liquid out like this without the marble tipping forward. If you turn the bottle this way round, the marble can now move to the front, and if you were trying to pour, it would stop the liquid from pouring out. So a really cool little bottle. It's pretty grubby, this one, and actually they're really quite hard to clean because you can't get something in to clean them very easily. So you can see there's like dirt all around the sides and things. I've got to figure out a way of getting in there. Maybe I need some long pipe cleaners or something to get that off, but it should clean up really nicely, and that'll be a nice little bottle for my collection. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed sharing my experience of pond dipping on the Basingstoke Canal. If you've liked this video, please check out my other videos and hit subscribe to see anything that I post in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.